Simon, thank you for joining me on the Spirit Farm podcast. It's great to have you.
Absolute pleasure to be here.
And you're coming to us from the UK right now, is that right?
Yep, it's beginning of winter, so it gets dark here around 3:30 p.m. And right now it's 8:30 p.m., so middle of the night.
3:30 p.m., really?
Yeah, it gets dark right now, really early. But it goes the other way later. You know, when in the summer we don't get dark till like 10 p.m. So
you have the longer days. So right now, what does it feel like? Cold. You only have a few hours of light. You got a 3-year-old son. What's a typical day in the life of Simon right now?
Well, I guess anyone that's got a 3-year-old will know what it's like. My day revolves around my son, and I try to make him my priority, of course, and be a present father. So often waking up in the morning, doing whatever he wants to do. He was meant to go to nursery today, and then woke up and said he didn't want to go. So, you know, we don't force him. And if he doesn't want to go, we let him make his own decisions. But of course, that meant all the things we did have planned had to change to accommodate his decision. But yeah, every day is different, really.
It is. I got a 7, 5, and 3-year-old, and it's just a lot. There's a lot going on. Are you going to have more kids, you think?
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, you never know. But right now, I'm pretty happy with what I've got.
All right, man. You're an entrepreneurial guru. I can't wait to get into some of that and hear about your story. But let's start with this article, this video that's up on your website, which is how to achieve work-life balance in 2021. Can you just give us a riff on that concept for a little bit? You mentioned Jeff Bezos in it, and then talk about your passion and how you're thinking about 2021 and what that means to you.
Yeah, well, I've been an entrepreneur since I was 15 years old. My mother kicked me out of home, and I was kind of forced into entrepreneurship. I was homeless for 4 days, and then found this kind of muscle in my brain, which is an entrepreneurial muscle that kind of woke me up to the ability to have something in your mind and create it and make it real.
Well, why did she kick you out, first of all? What happened? What happened at 15 years old that you're homeless?
Well, my father had died just a few weeks earlier. He died of a heart attack suddenly at 56. And I kind of had a train of thought around why my father had died. I felt like he had started a business too late in life, worked too hard too late in life. And my mother, who also, in fairness to her, just lost her husband, we were both emotionally charged, I think. And I had an opinion that I wanted to start a business of my own or do something not in line with what my mother wanted me to do. My mother wanted me to be a lawyer. And we kind of fell out, really. I mean, I just started to realize, and as I've got older, I realized this later as well in my life, that just because you're born into a family, it doesn't mean to say you have the same moral code or you have the same belief systems or even the same understanding of how the world works. So yeah, I just was different to my mum. And I think when my father passed, my father was no longer there balancing us out. And I just kind of conflicted directly with my mother. Yeah. And we fell out. And at that moment, she kind of said, you know, it's my way or the highway. And I said, I'll take the highway. And you know, little did I know the path it would lead me on. But today I thank her for it. I mean, she didn't do it to help me, I might add, at the time, but it has helped me. Yeah. And it's made me a better person. I think I woke up to how the real world works. Yeah. And I appreciate it so much more because of that hardship I had in the early days, and it helped me find my purpose. Yeah. So,
well, yeah. That's been my experience too. It seems like the most challenging, difficult, painful things in my life have led to the most growth, the most inspiration, the most clarity for what I'm supposed to do next or in the future. And I can't imagine, you know, not having a home or being homeless when I'm 15 years old. You must have been, you already must have been impressive just in terms of like your conviction and your, you know, belief in yourself. So after a few, go ahead. What were you going to say there?
Oh, I was going to say, I actually, funnily enough, I don't think I was that impressive. I think it's easier to be homeless at 15 than it is at 40. I've got so used to a comfortable life now. Right. I couldn't live like I did for those 5 days. You know, now I wouldn't last an hour, I don't think. And no, I think it was actually easy back then because I kind of had nothing. So, and I didn't really know, what luxury was from an adult perspective. So, yeah, I didn't feel strong when I was 15 years old. It did wake up in me. Yeah, I mean, I feel like it was something that I kind of had to do. I sometimes say to people today when they're starting businesses, the saying is burn the boats, right?
Yeah.
If you get to the island and you have to make that island livable, then you do.
Yeah.
But if you have the ability to get back on the boat and go back to the old island, which wasn't perfect, but it's a lot easier than building it from scratch, then a lot of people take the boat and go back.
Yeah.
And so I felt at 15 years old, I burnt the boat. I had to make it work to prove my mother wrong. And in that process, I think I realized as well that I could fail and it didn't matter because I didn't have my peer pressure, because I left school as well at the same time. So I basically didn't have any peer pressure. I didn't have any family pressure. And I could discover who I really was, as opposed to what I'd been pre-programmed. I mean, I remember at 12 years old, someone asking me, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I was like, I want to be a lawyer. I mean, 12-year-old really want to be a lawyer? Naturally. So my parents had drummed it into me that I was a good communicator, a good debater. I would probably make a good lawyer. Yeah. So, they weren't thinking, what problem should I solve when I grow up? They were just thinking, what job could I do? Which I feel like, that was the era. So I very much was pre-programmed in my subconscious that I was to be a lawyer. I would have hated to being a lawyer. Yeah. I mean, intellectually I can understand it, but I think, buying time is the way to live, not selling time. And selling time is just the worst way to live. And so I just don't think I could have been a lawyer and enjoyed it at all as a career. I probably could have made money out of it, but very different to enjoying it. But I think I'm lucky. I feel lucky that I had that difficult experience in the early years, because I think it shaped me in my later years.
Before we keep going on the balance, work-life balance thing, buying time versus selling time, I think that's really important just to pause on for a second. So what you mean is you're paid for the time that you invest in the work, right? So as an attorney bills by the hour, so he's only being paid those hours when he's working, in theory, or she's working. And what you're saying is you spend your money to create more time for yourself. Is that how you look at it?
Pretty much, yeah. I think I learned early on that if I was the only one, if I was being employed by the hour, then of course there was always going to be a limit to the amount I could achieve in a day.
Yeah.
Not just financially, by the way, but generally, if you are on the clock, then you end up, I don't know, skipping lunch because you've got to make the day successful. You probably skip the gym because you've got to make the day successful because you're on the clock. So I kind of learned early on that the way really to scale was to think about how I could buy myself time. So my first business was a gardening company. I certainly could have gardened. I wasn't particularly good at it. I did do quite a lot of gardening in the early few months of the business, but I soon realized that people were better at it than me, and I could spend my time elsewhere. And by hiring people, I would give people a job, and that would feel good. But I would also buy myself time. I every 8 hours that person was working in the garden, I wasn't having to work on that garden, and I could get another gardening contract.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I learned quickly. And then as I started studying this, I reviewed how, you hear these things. What did a billionaire do in his day? He gets up at 5 a.m. and he does this, doesn't he? I think what they always miss in those kind of breakdowns is often that the people that are successful, they're not actually in any way selling their time. They're always maximizing their time, because that is the most valuable thing. I think it's the only thing money brings you, actually. I think the only thing of value that money brings you is the ability to buy time to do the things that you want to do.
Well, it's the non-replenishable, right? I mean, we don't get any more time back.
Exactly. Which is why I think people can't understand when people get private jets and stuff like this. But if you can save an hour getting on the plane, an hour getting off the plane, and the plane leaves at the time schedule you want to leave, the value of that is so high. It's not about, I could just get a business class ticket or a first class ticket and I don't need my own plane. I think it is often just, you've saved 3 hours there. I've not waited for a plane. I've not gone to their schedule. I've not the other end had to, accommodate the airplanes getting off, getting on schedule. So you just save, 2 or 3 hours. If you fly a lot, you could say that every day.
Yeah.
And that starts being incredibly valuable when you scale it out.
Yeah. Is that something that you've done? Do you have a plane, or do you fly private when you can to save the time?
No, actually, I don't. And that's a bad example for me. I have a different way of thinking. I've had businesses in different markets, and instead of flying there and doing all that, I like sleeping in my own bed.
Yeah.
I like being in my home. So I've always hired people to run those offices so I don't need to fly there. I think when you end up, a lot of the time, I know a lot of people that traveled before COVID, I think half the time they were doing it just to get away from their lives. I quite like my life. So instead of getting a private jet and flying and doing those things, I just hired people to open those offices for me, or got partners in businesses that opened up those businesses in those markets. And so I didn't need to fly. I lived in Hong Kong for a long time. I didn't need to fly to Tokyo. I didn't need to fly to Beijing. I had people on the ground there that I trusted and were competent. And so I saved the ultimate amount of time by no private jet and no flying there at all.
Going. You have a 3-year-old to chase around after all,
Well, that's a completely different thing. That also makes you reevaluate time, because, I would have quite happily gone for dinner, this evening and met a friend or had a business meeting or whatever. But when your 3-year-old wants you to put him to bed, that's the most precious time you can possibly have, right? So, that's a whole new level. That's actually one of the reasons I often say to people, start a business as young as you can, because I had a lot of friends who did become lawyers, and when they were in their 20s, they earned a lot more money than me, and they would boast about how high profile their job was. In their 30s, they started adding on their costs, and by their 40s or in their late 30s, when they started having kids, their lifestyle inflation was so high, the amount of hours they had to work to keep up with that cost meant when their kids actually came, they didn't have the time. Whereas I did the opposite. I put a lot of groundwork into what I was doing when I was young, and I didn't earn much. And then as time went on and things scaled, I was able to buy time. And then eventually now I don't need to work if I don't want to. I'm self-motivated to work to solve a problem today in unemployment, but I don't have to work, And I think that's a big distinction, that's, you do the pain early, you get the gain later. You have an easy life earlier, you have more pain later, I think.
Yes. I think that a lot of people are waking up to that and realizing that they don't just have to go down these traditional paths. Part of it is probably our exposure because of being online and having access to the whole world in the palm of our hand. We're able to see so much. We're able to get inspiration from people like you on TikTok. That's where I found you, and to see how you're making your decisions and leading your life. And it's inspiring me to even think about how I coach my children, not to assume maybe college, not to assume this or these paths, but to how soon can you start a business? How soon can you think about these different ways of doing things? Because I wish I would have started sooner myself. So it's maybe part of it is the time we're living in, that more and more people are starting to come your direction and think like you outside of what was the box. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think learning entrepreneurial skills when you're younger is definitely very useful.
Yeah.
This concept, as I'm saying, about buying time, not selling time, these things are actually very useful throughout whatever career you go into.
Yeah.
So I think schools are not doing enough in that space. But I do think the construct is also interesting. Like you mentioned there, what people have got used to. But I think I see it, for example, in TikTok. I'll say, don't get a mortgage when you're young, and I'll get a lot of backlash for it. But what I'm really saying is, avoid the system when you're young, because the system is designed to kind of suck you in and then frankly make you a battery for the system, so that every month you're paying money to someone.
Yep.
If it's a bank or it's a credit card or it's a car loan, or, instead of living within your means, and as I say, the pain when you're young of no flashy car and no flashy business card. And eventually, as people wake up, you already have what you've woken up already. And when they wake up and say, "Oh, I realize all these possessions don't make me happy,"
right?
You kind of say, "I told you so." Time is what's valuable, and so. But when you're young, that's very hard because of the system, and it's getting worse in some respects, not better. In some respects, it's worse. Instagram's making it worse. I think people scroll through and see someone driving a Lamborghini when they're 20, and they're like, "I want that."
For sure.
And they're forgetting that that's actually not the important thing, and. Yeah, but I think it takes time. But people can easily fall into the trap. There's a big pressure on young people to get on the housing ladder and don't miss out.
Yeah.
And 20 years ago I bought a house. Now look, so there's some but they don't talk about whether or not they actually enjoyed their life paying for that house every month. There's a big difference between having a house you love and a life you love, and having a house that owns you.
That's right.
And you've been in a job you don't love to keep the mortgage payments up.
Well, and it especially when you're younger and before you have kids, it restricts your mobility. So if you're locked into something and you have an offer or an opportunity or something else, it's more difficult to see the world, and it's more difficult to respond to opportunities as they arise, or a pivot if you're an entrepreneur, if you are young and kind of bogged down with those commitments.
Yeah, and I've had quite a debate with the TikTok community about this, funnily enough, and the pushback is, well, rent is more expensive than mortgage. But I think what people don't realize, I mean, a fish grows to the size of its fish tank.
Yeah,
it's weird. Fish never grow bigger than the tank that they're in, and I think sometimes when people buy into, let's say their home village. And they get on the housing ladder and they can show off to their friends they've got a house suddenly. They forget that there's a big world out there, and they slowly but surely make their house nice. And then where they're going to live in some dump somewhere else in the world now. They've got their own home, and slowly but surely they get sucked into the system, and they get a bigger house and a new mortgage, and they buy stuff they don't need to fill the house up, and they decorate the house nicely and waste more money. The deposit's gone. So, and I see a lot of people in their 30s where they come to me pitching for investment in their businesses. And it kind of makes me a little bit sad and a little bit angry, because, you've got these brilliant people with these brilliant ideas that are trapped in their fixed cost base, where lifestyle inflation has also hit them. So it wasn't the first house or the second house, but the third house, they're still on their 30-year mortgage payment plan, but they're in a house with quite large monthly payments. And, they can't do what I did. So in my first business, when I was 15, I got my office on barter. The cricket club, I offered to do their gardening for them for free, and they gave me an office in the cricket club. And then I lived in that office.
That's awesome.
For about 6 months. So I had no rent for my living, and I had no rent for my office. And so, people can't get their head around it. They're like, well, if you're not paying mortgage, you're paying rent. Not necessarily. Maybe you're sleeping on a friend's couch in Paris. And maybe, like I did, I went and slept on a friend's couch in Hong Kong. If your mind's free from this weird, responsibility you have back in wherever you've just come from, you're free to use your brain to think forward and think, hey, what can I do next?
Well, your scenario was brilliant, because a cricket club probably has showers, right? So you're able to sleep in the office and go shower at the club, and you got what you need.
Yeah, I definitely couldn't do it now. I'm weak now.
You've gotten soft.
It was actually very exciting. I felt free. It was a very exciting time, although very hard, of course, as well.
Well, how do you coach people that maybe are in their 30s or 40s and wanting to take an entrepreneurial risk, or wanting to make a pivot, and they find themselves in this kind of a hard position? How are you coaching those types of people?
I mean, there's a lot of people like that, a lot. And I think I start off by kind of highlighting that you only regret what you don't do in life. If you're on your deathbed and you look back, I think that those are the things that you didn't try to do, that thing that you could have done that would have made the place we're living in a better one, or something better for your children later. You've got to try and do these things. And then I think I basically break away at what I call the kind of the subconscious training. So what if you sell the house you're living in? What happens exactly? It's not like if you've got kids, there's always a different dynamic. But let's say someone in their 20s, late 20s, 30s, hasn't got kids, has a business idea, and I'm saying, look, what's the worst? You go back to the job you hate, you get back on the housing ladder, you get a mortgage again. It's 30-year mortgage. So what's the difference? If you've got a job now, you can probably get a job later. Yeah. It's not the end of the world, right? I mean, you're lucky, is what I kind of. You can go back to that. I never had that choice.
Yeah.
So just to help people step past the threshold, and then I tell people that risk. A lot of business is about getting lucky in life. You need a lot of luck, and I don't care what people say, how smart you are. There's a lot of people that work very hard and never make it. Right. So the harder you work, the luckier you get is not true. Right. I actually made the most amount of money when I worked less hard. But there is an element of luck required, and one element of luck is risk. The more risk you take, the more luck you get. That's the truth. Not the harder you work, the luckier you get. The more risk you take, the luckier you get. So if you're risk averse, or you're living a very risk-free life, then you can expect a harder life later. And so I try to highlight that, pace out their life so they can see the end conclusion. You're going to be 65, your house is going to be paid off, but you're not going to want to leave that house because that's all you've ever known. and probably you're going to end up having to sell that house to pay for your, retirement home.
Yeah.
So is that really the life you want? Is that the path? Like, let's just play it out. You hate your job now. You can't improve it. You've tried, and you've got this idea you really want to do. Isn't it worth trying? And the worst case is a year from now. So it's kind of like giving people the first stepping stone, psychologically to get out. If they've got kids, it sounds like it would be harder, but I found it actually to be easier, because what is true is, and you'll know this as a father, that kids actually don't care how much money you've got.
Right.
And what kids really care about is your energy. And whether you're happy or not. You don't need to tell them whether you're happy or not. You can lie to them and say you're fine. They know the truth, right? Because they listen to they listen to your body language and your.
They perceive.
They know, and they know. So that's why you should never. I never tell my son. My son says, "Are you okay, Daddy?" And I don't feel great. I always tell him, "Yeah, I'm not feeling great today. I'm tired," or whatever. I tell him the truth, because I don't want him to grow up thinking I'm always lying to him.
Yeah.
Because they can actually tell.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he wouldn't be asking.
Yeah.
And so I think, kids want, my son knows I enjoy what I do. And I think that he understands that energy. And I see the opposite. I'm living in quite an affluent area in London. So I see the opposite, and I see parents that are not happy or people, and their children, it's a reflection. Their children become unhappy. That's why you see a lot of wealthy, families, not always just about wealth, but wealthy families that, their father's always working. Yeah. And the kids end up on drugs and, and all these things happen. Yeah. And you wonder, how did it happen? He had all this privilege,
Yeah.
And in part, it's because of that neglect. It's like parents replace love with a gift.
Yeah.
Time with a headline.
Yeah.
And so, so I think, with kids, I actually say, look, your kids don't really care. As long as they have time with you and you're healthy and happy and leading by example about how to live your life. Do you want them to grow up to be in a job they hate? Would that be what you want for your son or daughter? And then hopefully most of the time I do see a change in the mindset. They're like, no, I don't want my children to grow up and have this life. Well, I want them to enjoy what they do.
Yeah. And as you said, they perceive your energy. So they're feeling it from you. They're feeling your level of passion, engagement, closeness. They're getting all of that from you. So even if if you have a lot of money and you're just giving them money, yes, those kids tend to have drug problems. But also if they're feeling from you that you don't even like your life and you have all of this, I think that's why a lot of those teenagers really struggle, because you have all of this and you don't like your life, I'm screwed. I'm going to start medicating now, right? And so,
yeah. I mean, the other argument I hear a lot is that, I'm saving, I'm hating my job, but I'm paying the mortgage so that my children can have this house when I die and I leave them something. It sounds lovely, but in reality, I'm super, super grateful that I never got anything from my parents, because then when I earned it myself, the self-worth, the excitement of, being able to look back and realize you created it without it, being handed to you. And my first car I ever bought was a crappy Polo, a VW Polo. I loved that car, And I think if I just bought a car, I wouldn't have loved it as much. Yeah. And then when I got a better car, I wouldn't have appreciated it in the same way. Yeah. So I say to my son, look, I'll pay for his education, make sure he's got food up to a certain age, and then at the end of the day, I'm not going to leave him all my money.
Yeah,
I'm going to spend it if I can.
Yeah,
and so that's kind of. It sounds hard, like you don't want to leave anything for your son, but I think it'd be the best thing for him. Yeah. He's a smart, capable person, and he'll be able to make his own way in this world. I don't want my money to corrupt him.
Yeah, yeah. So you started 17 companies. And you've invested in some 66 companies. What?
Yeah, I invested in one recently. So I've
67?
68.
68.
68. Yeah.
What about entrepreneurship works for you, other than kind of being forced out of the nest, figuring it out, and just like having to like find the strength within you? Do you think that you have any other kind of natural tendencies in that direction? Do you have any kind of superpower or genius, or is it all learned?
Well, I guess it's an interesting question, because I always say I really believe that no one's born anything. Right? I mean, again, you've got kids, you'll know what I mean. And my son is a product of his environment and his natural tendencies. But that doesn't mean he could be a doctor. He could be a lawyer. I mean, there's many different types of doctors, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's there's a brain surgeon type doctor, and then there's the GP. One has hand skills, one has empathy skills, right? I mean, and I feel like no one is born anything. So I love this whole concept that, entrepreneurship, everyone can do it. I don't think I was necessarily born to be an entrepreneur. I wasn't at 7 years old selling lemonade out of a lemonade stand outside my house. I wasn't. I don't think anyone's born anything. I think necessity can breed a certain thing.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly if you're born into poverty, I see it, with a lot of crime. People who are entrepreneurs turn to crime because of the environment they're in.
Mm-hmm.
But if they were in a different environment, they wouldn't be using those skills for crime. They'd be using those skills for good, right?
Yep.
So I think definitely nature plays a part, but nurture is the key.
Yeah.
And I think you can be taught. And there are 8 different types of entrepreneurs. There's many different types. You've got the kind of the Elon Musk types, the kind of brilliant genius kind of, and you've got the Google founder kind, and then you've got the Steve Jobs type, and you've got lots of different types. And so I think sometimes people have a preconception, you must be outgoing, for example, to be an entrepreneur, or you must be able to sell to be an entrepreneur. But of course, that's not true. There's plenty of very successful people, that have done incredibly well, that are just, stuck in front of a computer all day.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's for me, it can be taught, and I love that idea that it can be taught, and I'm very much trying to make people realize that.
Yeah, I think that one of the reasons that people are slow to start their own businesses and go out is that risk factor that you mentioned, and then they read a stat like 80 to 90% of all new businesses fail in their first 2 years. I hate these stats. Right?
60% of stats are made up. Stats are very dangerous. That's why, 7 out of 10 people that go to business school never start a business, because they get taught the stats. And what the stats don't show you is, yes, those businesses fail, but then those people go again. The ones that go again, they fail less. And then the people that go again after the second fail even less, and eventually you succeed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why, so often A students end up working for C students, because C students are quite prepared to fail. It kind of goes back to what we didn't really finish off earlier, which is the work-life balance thing. I think, people will hear that, if I'm an entrepreneur, I have no work-life balance, like now I work 9 to 5 and I have my evenings and my weekends free, and, why would you want the pressure of that, entrepreneurial life? No, thank you. And I think what people don't realize, again, kind of a stat that you don't have a work-life balance, what people don't get is that when you're an entrepreneur, because you end up doing what you want to do, there is no work-life balance, because there's only life. And because there's only life, you're not trying to separate things into work and life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And things get a lot easier. And I say it might be hard at the beginning. So I don't think I could have started the business I've started now having a 3-year-old. I definitely would have to do it differently. I am doing it differently today. I can't work in the same way that I was when I was 15, or live the way I was when I was 15. But, ultimately, I think that I integrate him. You've probably seen in my videos. My son will jump in my videos all the time.
Yeah.
He's part of what I create. He's part of my story. He's part of who I am and what I know and how it might be useful to other people. I don't cut and say, right, I'm off now. You're not involved. I'm back. I'll be back at 5. I integrate everything. Yeah. And then I don't, but no, that doesn't mean that some weeks I feel like, well, I didn't go to the gym enough this week, so I spend a bit more time on my health. And then another week I'll be like, I didn't get those targets done on the business side. I better focus on that this week. So life's like living on a wobbly stool, one of my podcast guests once said, and I love it. I think that's definitely how it is. And if you accept that and you stop trying to get balance, you'll stop sending yourself crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And your podcast, for reference, is called The Good Luck Club, right?
Totally. I'm sure there'll be links in the podcast.
Yep.
But
we will link
Good
to
Luck Club. Goodluckpod.com. But yeah, we interview the world's most successful entrepreneurs and they tell us how they did it. So it's a fascinating insight. We've just finished our 60th podcast.
That's awesome.
And I've learned so much. I have invested in 58 companies. I have started 17 businesses, and I know a lot about business. But wow, I'm surprised how much I don't know when I listen to these guys.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's back to what you said already, that probably all of these entrepreneurs, they represent all the different personality types. Everyone does it differently. Everyone finds a way. They can all find a way. And I think that that's probably one of those things or those misconceptions that needs to break is that people are afraid. They don't think that they naturally are a business person or an entrepreneur person. And what you're saying is anyone can do it. Anyone can do it. What are some of those characteristics that you try to develop in people when they're starting out? That when they're breaking through that fear barrier of, oh, most businesses fail. How do you try to help them instill the confidence to move forward and to learn the skills that they need to learn?
Well, as I say, most people are entrepreneurs. They're just different types of entrepreneurs. But one of the things I kind of try to make clear is things like fear. Fear is actually an asset. Fear was given to us as a gift. Like fear's original design. You see a lion coming towards you. Yeah. You feel fear, and what it actually does, it makes you think faster, run faster, and you can survive, right? So, in the modern world, for some reason, I would say in the last, 100 years, fear is this thing that, we've recognized, and if you feel it, most people want to get rid of it as quickly as possible. So if someone says do something, they go, oh, I don't want to do that. Oh, no, thanks. No, because they just want to stop the fear feeling as quickly as possible, right? But if you actually realize that fear is a skill, when you feel fear and you lean into it, it can give you the superpower to do almost anything. So the first thing I try and make people realize is that if they're feeling fear about starting a business, that's good. And fear is linked to risk. So if you can increase your tolerance for fear and enjoy fear, I hardly feel fear anymore. I want to feel it. I crave it. And so, I'm missing the old world. I love going on stage and talking to thousands of people, and because it gives me a little bit of fear. There's not many things that do.
Right, anything can happen up on stage. Every time there's like that little bit. Yeah,
and I crave that because it's a gift. But I built up such a tolerance that I don't feel it. But that's one thing I think people don't realize. They think that fear is something to suppress and to avoid and so on. And I'm saying, if you're feeling fearful about something, it's a good sign. You're about to get a superpower given to you. Now, you asked me earlier for another superpower. I think your weaknesses are also your strengths. So, for example, I'm dyslexic.
No way.
But that has proven to be a very useful thing for me.
How's that?
I'll give you an example. When I was in school, the teachers in the school system so bad, they don't really recognize dyslexia. They initially think you're a bit stupid, right? Which I'm not. But initially they think you're not reading at the same speed as the other kids. There's something wrong with you. They put you in a special ed class, and they don't understand that you're just seeing the world differently when it comes to text, right?
Yeah.
Now, I overcame it in many respects, and I can read now by understanding what the letters are as a block. Anyway, point being is, when I was told in my English class, I got an A in English language and English literature, both subjects, I got an A, which for a dyslexic person doesn't make sense, but this is how I got an A. When I was given a book to read and I was told to write about it, I actually just questioned all the people in my class that read that book. And I got 30 different viewpoints of the same book. So when I wrote my view on the book, I gave 30 different angles of the same point. So I would get A's because I was completely unique.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think that, that so often, and then I would actually, my mum would understand my dyslexia, and, I've got grievances with my mother even today, but, I have to say at that point in my life, I would dictate to her what I was thinking, having got all the feedback, and she'd write it down for me to help me actually write these essays. So it was my work, but she was just helping me write it down, and I get A's.
That's brilliant.
And I think a lot of the time people see their weaknesses as weaknesses.
Yeah. Well, the weaknesses, they are a gift if you decide they're a gift, right? I mean, if you make them a gift, because they can make you resourceful like that, and then you find all these new opportunities of doing things in different ways, and it opens you up to new possibilities. And I think, I totally agree with you. The just like we talked about the challenges in our life, the hardships, the devastations, the pain, that becomes our purpose, our mission, or catapults us and whatever. Similar with the weaknesses.
Totally, yeah.
Okay, so you have decided that your purpose, I mean, the 17 companies, you've obviously made lots of money. You've decided that your purpose in life is to help other people find their purpose. Is that right?
Yeah, and linked to that, I think I want to help people become able to control their own destiny. So part of that is perhaps having a business of your own. So if you can't find a job, or there's not a job out there that you enjoy, then create one. And it's just that simple. And in that process of creating your own business, I always say to people, don't fill a market gap, build something that you love. So many people talk, I've got this business idea and it's going to fill this market gap. I'm like, yeah, but do you love the idea of running that business? Will you have an enjoyable life? So, helping people, plug into purpose. I've also seen it with existing businesses that are suffering. If you re-engineer the business and install purpose, they can get a new lease of life for the business, and actually create something where they love their day-to-day, which I think is so overlooked as an important part of life. It's like, okay, I didn't enjoy my day-to-day. I don't enjoy my job, but hey, it's the evening time now. Let's have some wine and I'll somehow make it.
Right.
They're giving away 8 hours of their day to something they don't love.
Right. When did you make that decision to start doing what you loved instead of just money-making opportunities? When did that click for you?
Well, I think initially when I was 15, I just wanted to survive. So my first business was a gardening company. It wasn't particularly purposeful, and it wasn't particularly deep. I just wanted to make a living. And but I think, as I started to get success from entrepreneurship, I kind of realized what a magical thing it was. And I think around 23, when I was actually, started to do quite well, I just wanted other people to know about it. It wasn't like I really understood the word purpose. Purpose was never taught to me in school.
Right.
I don't think I ever really understood the word purpose. I never came up. No one ever said to me, right, today our class is on purpose and how we find it. No, never. I don't think that ever happened in school. No. And I don't think it really happened at home either. I think my parents were, a product of the new credit era and mortgages, and it was quite capitalistic. And it's just about building a business to make money. And so I think when I realized I just loved entrepreneurship, and then I met a lot of people that did not enjoy what they were doing.
Yeah.
And I just, when I would sit with them, and I would almost feel guilty. I'd be like, oh, I love what I'm doing. This is what I'm doing. This is how I'm doing it. I'm off to Hong Kong. I'm off to do, people were like, yeah, I wish I could do that. I'm like, well, why don't you? You just end up having these just like conversations with people. I don't see that this is my purpose to convince them that their mindset and their brainwashing when they were young, let's reprogram it. And you can have this life and you don't need this debt to make you happy. I just found myself falling into that kind of. Initially, people were very annoyed at me. They're like, Simon, I've got no choice. I've got a mortgage. Why are you telling me to?
I'm in the real world here.
Yeah, back in the real world, Simon. Everyone hates their job, don't they? Their reality is they just assume it's reality for everyone. No one enjoys what they do they? I'm like, of course they do. You almost had that annoying friend initially. It's like, really, you're just the exception. I got that a lot. You're just the exception. So most people don't enjoy it. As if that's the good reason not to try and change your life. Most people just in the rat race time, and that's the way it is. And I kind of, I don't accept that status quo. I think that I'm not saying everyone has to be an entrepreneur, but I am saying everyone could enjoy their day to day. That's something I know to be true.
I've seen those concentric, it's not concentric circle. It's that Venn diagram with the circles that like one part is, this is my passion. I love to do this. This is a need that I see out there in the world. And then the third one is, I have the skills to deliver on it. Have you seen that kind of a Venn diagram? Yeah. Do you agree with that? Or would you frame it differently?
No, I agree with it. I mean, with these things, there's always nuance missing. Like I was saying about, the harder you work, the luckier you get. I actually think there's a formula for luck that's a lot more complicated than that. There's 3 steps to getting luckier in life, and it's way more complicated than that one-off Instagram post of work harder, right? And I think that those diagrams quite often, they're missing, I think, the nuance of an individual's life, their experiences. And, I certainly don't enjoy every single day. I even though I'm a millionaire and I'm doing exactly what I want, I'm with someone I love, I'm married to someone I love, I've got a beautiful boy, I've got so many things in my life. I am not happy every day. Right? And I think it's understanding the distinction between, like happy and satisfied. And I think, yes, some days I'm not happy. The computer didn't work this morning, or some, things happen, and it's frustrating, and that's life. But I think the bigger picture purpose is what kind of pushes you through. And then the love of the people in your life, the genuine love and respect for the people in your life. Those diagrams don't explain that very well.
Right.
You know, and they are adjustable things too. You know, it's but I think sometimes there's always someone trying to simplify it, and I think that quite often it's complicated.
What about your 3 steps of luck? Are you going to give those to us?
Sure, yeah, it's in my new book, but you know, don't bother buying the book. Just listen to your podcast; they can get it all for free. But yeah, I mean, basically, the fundamentals of it for me. I mean, I always thought that I sat down to write my book about. You know, my initial idea was I'm going to write down how brilliant I am.
17 companies.
Yeah, I went to Hong Kong in 1997 when Hong Kong was getting handed back to the Chinese from the British. When everyone else was leaving Hong Kong, you know, I was the only British person moving there.
Wow.
And, you know, it's a brilliant move because there was a big gap in the market for kind of a Western-minded marketing agency, which is what I built, a company called Fluid, which I sold to PwC, the accounts company, in 2016 for more money than I'll ever need. And, you know, I basically, I wrote down in this book these things that I did that showed that I was brilliant. And then as I started going into the detail, a bit like these diagrams and things you're just describing, you know, I'm like, this is just like all these other diagrams, you know, there's all these other things that just make you look brilliant because you've got a formula. There was something more to it, and luck kicked in. And I looked at each moment where, you know, let's say when PwC bought my business, I didn't know they were going to buy my business. I didn't build that business thinking they were going to buy my business. And they bought it exactly the time that I felt like it was time for a change, you know? So, but the 3 steps basically are, you have to be, I mentioned it earlier, you have to be, number one is you have to be willing to take risks.
Take risks.
Yeah. A lot of it. And the more risk you take, the luckier you get. There are 2 types of luck. One that's in the dictionary today, which is what we call random luck. How the dictionary describes it, luck is random, right? And there definitely is this random luck. Let's call it, to frame it properly, like where you're born, right? You can't really control that.
No.
You know, it is what it is.
Or what family you're born into.
Totally, yeah. And you know, ironically, you know, our royal family here, for example, one of them just moved to the US because he hates being part of the royal family.
Right.
So you think riches and success and, you know, guaranteed privilege and you're never going to not have a meal in your life, right? How lucky is he? Only to realize that, yes, sounds like you're born into luck, right? But he was actually unlucky because that didn't suit personality. And so equally, we all hear stories of kids that were born in the streets that grew up to be, you know, someone successful and famous. I was going to name someone, then I might get into trouble because they might not have grew up in the streets. But the point I'm trying to make is, you know, ultimately, you know, those stories. So there's definitely the random luck. I would say coronavirus is a random piece of bad luck that we've all experienced, right?
Yeah.
But I do think there's a second piece of luck, which is kind of how you handle the luck, right? How you react to coronavirus or frankly, how you react to where you're born. And I think that is where you can control luck. And there's 3 elements to it. The first is you've got to be willing to take risk. If you don't take risk, you won't get lucky. And there are different types of risks. So you go buy a lottery ticket, for example. Yeah, you've queued up. These days, that sounds quite risky. These days, but you queue up. You buy a ticket. You know, the risk is $1 or £1 or whatever, and then you can have exponential moments of luck linked to random luck, which, you know, you win the lottery. That's it. But you still took that risk, right? You still got in that queue, took that time out, and paid that money, right? Now, of course, there's other types of risks. I think starting a business is definitely a risk. I think it's less risky than working for someone else, mind you. You're in control of it, at least. You're in control of whether or not you're going to get fired. and so I think that, you know, but risk is definitely an important part, and fear, you've got to leverage fear, not fear it. And then the second element is basically about knowing your destination. If you want to get lucky in life, you must know your destination. It's kind of like you need to know what to ask the universe for. And so often when people are like, I've got a business, it's not working. And I say, well, where are you trying to go? And they're not sure. But they're not happy with what they've got.
Right.
You know, so how can you fix it if you don't know your destination? And to add to that analogy, I always like describe it as like, you know, if you're getting in a car and going somewhere and you don't know your destination, there's so many problems with that. You know, but if you know your destination, you can put the stuff in the car that you need when you get to that destination. You can get the people in the car with you that are enjoyable for that type of journey, whether it's short, long, or whatever.
Yep.
You can decide what type of car to drive in. And therefore, a lot of people, when you say destination, I say to them, what's your destination with this business? It's like, I want to make $50 million US. I'm like, that's not a destination. That's fuel for the car to get you to your destination. That's what money is, right? But what's your destination? And a lot of people can't answer it past money. You know, and that money's just the fuel for the car. And then the final element for increasing your chances of luck is persistence. And, you know, lots of stats around this, but a lot of people, you know, good salespeople, and remember, good is the enemy of great, right? Yeah. But good salespeople will generally, on average, contact someone 5 times before they give up.
Yeah.
And you know, we all know the cycle. They contact them, and basically these people don't reply. They follow up, they don't reply. Maybe they send them a letter or some other bit of collateral, you know, and eventually, like, they wait a month and try again, and wait another month, try, and then they give up. The lead goes cold, or they quit their job and done something new. Finished. Yeah. Right. But really great, successful salespeople, and I count myself as one of these people, by the way. I have a persistent approach to sales. So when I started my agency, Fluid, I wrote down 50 companies that I wanted to work with. And I remember ticking off company number 50, finally got them on board. 9 years after I wrote that list.
9 years and you got all 50?
9 years. So, and what I did, and every single month for 9 years, somehow I made contact with that company. Wow. So the person that was running the marketing department, I would find out their birthday and send them a birthday card. I would find out, you know, at Easter, I'd send them something. At Christmas, of course, I'd send them something. Even at Chinese New Year, I'd send them something. You know, like, I find a way of politely being persistent.
Yes.
And that led to, you know, 16 years later, me selling that company for a lot of money. Yeah. You know, and so a lot of people are impatient, and they're not willing to be persistent. They'll do it 5 times. They didn't get what they want. Time to move on. And they'll wonder why things don't work. So to get lucky, you need those 3 things. There's a lot more in the book.
And the book is called Hack Luck.
Yeah, I've just been told by my publisher we might have to slightly change it due to a trademark problem. But yeah, it's Simon Says Hack Luck.
Simon Says Hack Luck. Okay. Yeah. And then will that be out? On your website, it says January. Is it going to be delayed because of the trademark?
Should be okay.
Okay.
Should be out in January.
Okay.
But you don't have to buy it. Seriously, you can go listen to my 600 videos on TikTok instead if you want.
I'm going to get it anyway. But your videos on TikTok are great. What inspired you to get onto TikTok? Was it the shutdown? Was it seeing how TikTok was taking off? You just really driven to help younger people start companies? What did that look like for you?
I guess it's a combination of all of those things. Primarily, I always like to go and do the opposite to what everyone else is kind of saying. So a lot of people, you say TikTok, that was for kids. And it's like, don't go to Hong Kong. It's being handed back to the Chinese. Right. Do you want to live in a communist country?
Right.
You know, like, love like pushing the boundaries of people's preconceptions, even my own. You know, like I love that. That's one of the reasons I have a podcast show, because I don't believe in university education anymore. I think it's a complete waste of time for young people. But I love having an intellectual debate with people that have been successful and went to university. You know, because I like having a healthy debate about things. I'm not always right, and everyone's circumstances are different. That's kind of what I'm saying about these diagrams that don't do it for me, because they miss something. But I do. I just have that feeling that sometimes, you know, it's good to kind of push back. And I think TikTok was one of those things. I had a lot of people saying, oh, TikTok, you know, it's for kids, people are dancing. So I like to go and have a look, because a big part of my message is for young people. Yeah. Because I think, you know, fine, if you're in your 40s, you've already got the debt, you've already not been able to take that chance, and now you've got, you know, 3 kids and you can't. You know, I don't want to cause you pain or your partner pain, or just, you know, you live the life you've chosen. You've made that bed, lie in it. I do try to help people. I have helped a lot of people in that age. Don't get me wrong, but it's much easier with young people. Yeah, it is. You know, it's much easier to get people, you know, to understand. Don't get into debt when they're young. It's much harder when they've got into debt and already in that problem. Yeah. And so, you know, if I can help 1 person out of 10 not get into debt when they're young, and then hear this word purpose, and then build something with purpose, which butterfly effect could end up making the world a better place, then I'll do it. So, but actually, when I got on TikTok, it's no young people at all. It's a lot of open-minded people that, partly want to have fun.
Yeah.
And I've really learned a lot being on TikTok.
Yeah.
I mean, I've actually made a few friends on TikTok.
Yeah.
And I think, and I love it now when people say, "Oh, why my daughter's on TikTok. She's 15. It's a bit weird you're on it." And I'm like, why is it weird? Shouldn't there be more good role models in business on platforms teaching kids about these things? It's I have to be careful about swearing and stuff. I do try to avoid swearing. I do sometimes swear. So I do try to be, but equally I know, a 15-year-old myself, I was swearing. You're around people that swear all the time. So,
of course.
But equally I like to kind of open up people's minds. And I think when you're younger, it's a little bit easier to wake people up.
Yeah.
When people get old and stuck in their ways, they get stuck in the matrix.
Yep.
Love that movie. That you get stuck in the system.
Yep.
In that movie, there's a moment where, Neo is told, we don't normally wake people up in their 30s. You're too long in the system.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard for your mind to accept there's another universe, an alternate universe.
Yeah.
And it's true. If I speak to someone who's 15 and I tell them I left school at 15 and I retired at 40, it kind of blows people's mind. Like, how did that happen? You didn't get a network at university. You don't have an education. How is that even possible? And you're like, well, I just went and did things, I experienced the world.
Yeah. What's the image, the statue behind you?
It's my wife and I together 20 years, and
congratulations.
We got a statue kind of commissioned to kind of celebrate the freedom. My wife in particular is my mentor and best friend, and so she liberates me, and she's just a very special person. So I made a statue, but it's a very interesting statue because it's very thin, the statue itself, but the actual thing she holds up is very heavy.
Yeah. And
so it's quite an interesting, the way one person, doesn't matter your body size or who, what you look like, you can actually carry a lot, you can actually do a lot. And so it kind of symbolizes that. So
she's been with you on this, a lot of this journey, 20 years. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Basically I moved to Hong Kong in my 20s and met her kind of quite early on. And we initially actually started a business together.
That's
so
awesome.
we started working together. And I think, that's like moving in with someone when you start a business with them. You really find out about their moral code, and, nothing gets hidden. I know plenty of people that are married to people they don't really know. If you don't know what someone's like at work, you don't know what they're really like.
Yeah.
And so we've been together a long time. Not easy. I'm sure
Yeah.
Being married is a big commitment, like anything else.
That's right.
If you're willing to put the effort in, it's incredibly rewarding as well.
Yeah. That's awesome, Simon. Well, you mentioned the last question. You mentioned taking risks, having your destination, persevering. Those are key themes for me. You also mentioned the difference between just kind of temporary happiness versus being satisfied and having purpose in what you're doing. Do you have any kind of daily habits, a spiritual practice, a discipline, a routine that you do to help yourself stay in that place of being grounded, being grateful, persevering, anything like that that's kind of helped you continue on this course?
I know the popular answer to a question like this is to say, yes, I meditate, and yes, I do these things and those things. The truth is, again, this is where there's no solution that fits everyone, right?
Yeah.
I mean, for me, there's a couple of things. I definitely need time for myself. So I like to go and work out or go on a walk in the woods. I live near a nice park. I like to hang out with my dogs. They don't talk to me. I love talking, but we just have energy between us, and they follow me, and we go into the woods and we have a good time. We don't have to talk. So I guess it's a form of meditation, but I don't sit there in a room and meditate in a traditional form.
Yeah.
But I like to have that space. I love spending time with my son. I love spending time with my wife.
Yeah.
I love spending time on TikTok. I love being on my podcast show. But if I had to do any of them all the time, I would definitely hate them all. So I think for me, it's just mixing it up and having a bit of it all whenever you can.
Well, it sounds like you got an introverted nature to you, and kind of recharging by yourself and getting out with the dogs or going for a walk or working out might be part of what recharges you and helps you stay energized.
Yeah. I always saw myself as an extrovert. I can jump on stage and talk to 1,000 people. I have no problem. I'm very extroverted, but I do think there's moments where I like to just have peace and quiet and time to think and time to just, like when I go on these walks, I don't listen to anything. I just listen to nature. Most people are listening to podcasts, my podcast, hopefully, or yours, on walks. But, but I like just listening to the world, and have some of my best ideas in moments where I'm not thinking about the business.
I bet.
And so I like to create those moments.
I bet. Simon, well, thank you, man. Thank you for taking the time. It's a pleasure to meet you. Thanks for the inspirational stuff that I've seen you do on TikTok. What's your handle on TikTok or other social media?
At Simon Squibb generally, but at Simon Squibb 8 on TikTok. Some cyber squatters taken Simon Squibb. Don't follow that evil person. Follow me at Simon Squibb 8.
Simon Squibb with 2 B's, right? And then
2 B.
And then 8 on TikTok. That's great. Well, we'll put links to stuff and we'll flash things up on the screen for those people who are watching via YouTube. It's a pleasure to meet you. Thanks for what you're doing, and thanks for inspiring people to find their purpose and do what they're made to do and live better lives, man.
Likewise, thank you.